everybody for being here. I'm John Arola, and we're about to launch into a weird day. A really weird day in the news. This pre-show, buckle up. It's weird. I'm not late. I don't think I'm late. What time is it? Hold on. Okay, I'm maybe a little bit late. Anyway, thank you for being here. We got weird news for you, but we also have a treat for you. So, while the pre-show might be weird, the full show, which is coming up in about 45 minutes, will feature the return, after a long time, of someone longtime viewers might remember, Dr. Aquelis Gordon, one of my best friends in the entire world. He's a professor of psychology. He's joined us on the show a couple times, including way back at the beginning of the Damage Report. He actually took part in a couple of our sort of test shows that we did for a month or two that nobody ever saw. And so he's going to be returning. And we've got a lot of news that actually ties really well into some of his own work having to do with racism and masculinity and sort of the psychology behind some of these things. So it's going to be absolutely awesome. Definitely stay tuned for that. And on that show, let's see, we're going to talk about Madison Cawthorn picking a fight with a tree. We've got Ben Shapiro's thoughts on the Oprah interview with Meghan Markle. What does he think about racism? Does racism exist at all? Let's see. Oh, we've got some actually important information about the new guidelines for those who've been vaccinated. So that's very important. More and more of you are going to gain access to the vaccine over the next month or two. And so when that happens, what can you do? What can you not do? We're going to break down all the specifics, and it's pretty important, and a lot more besides. So tons there, but we also have a lot here. And like I said, it's crazy. You know what? I want to demonstrate how crazy it is. But first, hit the like button. About a third of you have 35% or so. If we could get that up, that'd be great, especially with how YouTube has apparently decided that news doesn't matter anymore, and they're just not going to do any algorithmic stuff having to do with it. So anything you could do to help us out in that regard would really help as we go forward until they get their shit together. But anyway, until then, here's something that's weird. So this is from a day ago. Paul Gosar is a congressman. Not like a wacko state senator. They can do whatever they want. Congressman. And he tweeted this. So that is, in fact, a cartoon of a prostitute talking to a man in a car. And it's a meme because, you know, the right's really good with memes, and they're very funny and everything now, and they're very down with the kids. And so he put it there with hashtag America First. And the prostitute is saying, $50, whatever you want, baby. To which he said, can you? And then the meme he fills in, tell everyone America first is inevitable. And I guess I get the idea. The idea is that he's a weirdo. The idea is that he doesn't get how memes work. The idea is, I don't know, the core ideological idea that he's delivering for his, the people who like him is, I believe that prostitutes are intended to spread white supremacist political propaganda. I don't know. Tell everyone America first is inevitable. Is that that Trump will return, or that Trump might have lost, but some sort of xenophobic fascist America is inevitable? That defeating Trump isn't enough to defeat fascism? Paul Gosar hopes to someday be a fascist, I guess. Of course, in this meme, is he the guy that's going to the prostitute? We were warned by his family that he was a piece of shit. We were totally warned about that. We knew that going in, and he's only been worse and worse ever since. I mean, Paul Gosar, of course, he's putting that America First thing in. Oh, I'm putting on it that it's white supremacist, or it's implying some sort of desire for fascism or something like that. Oh, he did just speak, though, at that white nationalist conference a couple days ago. And the most amazing thing about that is, doesn't matter. A couple of years ago, Steve King got run out of Congress as a result of his, I would say, maybe slightly less explicit support for white nationalism. I mean, maybe his quotes were worse, but Paul Gosar is going to their events. I don't know, maybe Steve King did that as well. And he was run out of the party. The party has changed a lot. It has devolved over the past few years, and so that is not enough to get you run out at this point. It just doesn't matter. Isn't it amazing? In the past 2 months or so, we've got 3 congressmen, relatively new congressmen. One, Madison Cawthorn has been accused of sexual harassment and possibly sexual assault by a ton of women. He apparently had this whole reputation in his college where women knew not to spend time with him. And that doesn't matter. He's not in any trouble. Marjorie Greene talked positively about wanting Nancy Pelosi to be shot in the head. Doesn't matter. Now, she lost her committee assignments, but the Republicans had basically nothing to do with that. Paul Gosar goes to a white nationalist conference. Doesn't matter. The party of personal accountability and also of all of the moral blah, blah, blah can treat women like absolute crap, can imply that murder is an acceptable means to political power, and can personally endorse a sort of white nationalist fascist takeover of America. And there shouldn't be any consequences for that, and all of that is totally appropriate. And yet that is the party. I guess Paul Gosar, how does he rank? I don't know. Ryan Nowicki says, do you think getting rid of the filibuster completely will result in GOP pushing more through when they take the Senate? Seems potentially a bad move. Okay, so I won't go on too long about this because I've talked about this several times. I don't believe so. I really don't believe so. And I've described why in the past, but I will briefly say that the reason I don't think it'll happen is, and maybe this is controversial, maybe I'm the only person saying this, is there's really nothing that they want to do. So if the idea is they'll really want things, and so they will get rid of the filibuster so that they can push it through, first of all, they can already do that. They could get rid of the filibuster if they wanted to. Mitch McConnell is not exactly shy about exercising political power. If there was stuff they really wanted to do, presumably they could get rid of the filibuster. So that's always a possibility. But would they get rid of the filibuster? Well, what is it that they want to do that would be so important that, oh my God, now the Democrats have opened it up for them and the filibuster isn't there? Well, what do they want? What does the Republican Party actually want? They want judges. Filibuster doesn't apply to it. They don't need to make any change to the filibuster to get all the judges they want. They can block them when the Democrats are in charge in theory and then put their own forward when they get in charge. They want tax cuts, so sort of economic bullshit to benefit the 1% in corporations. They'll pass that via reconciliation. So again, they won't need the filibuster for it. And aside from that, I don't know. No, look, it's not to say that there's nothing that they could come up with, maybe something having to do with immigration or something. But the thing is, the only areas where you could even in theory make a case that they might want to do something having to do with some military adventure abroad or immigration or whatever, they can do all of that via executive order now. The situation right now is really set up perfectly for them. The filibuster already doesn't apply to the stuff that it might block for them that they want to do, and everything else they do via executive order. And so I get the fear, and it's not to say that it couldn't apply to anything, but I just don't think it is such a small potential benefit to the Republicans to not have the filibuster anymore. It is literally everything for the Democrats. It is blocking everything the Democrats could possibly want to do. And so I don't see it as even. I don't see it as a tough decision. Dango Bengal says, it's a dog whistle to assessors, not... Yeah. Dango Bengal also said, King said, what's wrong with white nationalism? Exactly. Diana Murray says, Florida is trying to mandate a civics class teaching the dangers of socialism, but the 1690 Project is indoctrination. Yep. And we just showed you the video of them having kids throw masks into a fire, but they don't want indoctrination or anything like that. Colonel Dashing, welcome to Tier 1 YouTube membership. Enjoy that little egg and the emojis. Thank you for being here. Dengoss says, hey John, how are you? Can I have Forgetful Dragon since I have the memory of a goldfish? Also, hey John, how are you? Good point. You can, but you're not going to remember that you have it. So I look forward to giving it to you again at some point. What happens if they get rid of it and then the GOP takes back the majorities in 2022? No, but Martin, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know that much will happen. What is the filibuster blocking the Republicans from doing at this point? Again, judges, it doesn't block anything there. Tax cuts, which is the only real policy priority that Republicans ever have, it doesn't block any of that. What is it blocking? Some sort of controversial infrastructure plan for the Republicans? their idea of some sort of massive overhaul of healthcare, they don't have any policies. And I mean that quite literally. They didn't have a platform in 2020. They didn't pass an actual platform. Trump repeatedly was asked what he wanted to do if he got reelected. He couldn't come up with anything. There are things they'll do. They'll throw kids in cages and all of that. They'll sell weapons to the Saudis. But as always, they don't need the legislature for that. They certainly don't care about a filibuster. They can drop as many bombs as they want, invade as many people as they want, throw trillions to the rich. They can do everything that they want to do regardless of the filibuster. For the left, it is literally blocking everything that we care about. There's a few edge cases like student loan debt that in theory Biden could do right now, regardless of filibuster, and he chooses not to. So that's incredibly frustrating. But it is not a symmetrical playground. Like these, I don't watch CNN, I don't watch MSNBC generally, so I don't know if they're having these debates, but I imagine that when this sort of thing is debated, it is debated as if the consequences are equal for both sides, and that is simply not the case when it comes to the filibuster. Very much by design. Wayne Cigar says, I would like to believe he's calling his followers hookers. Maybe, I don't know. Rajan says, any chance that TDR TYT will have Bo the fifth column on for a show or interview? Asking because I've seen TYT use clips of his videos before. It's certainly a possibility. Rye Guy says, hey John, hey Dragon Squad, hope everyone is well. Smash that like button. Thank you, Rye Guy. If everyone could do that, that would be great. T-Bank says, if the Democrats get rid of the filibuster and pass sweeping voting rights legislation, then it decreases the likelihood that Republicans can take back the majority. Exactly. And by the way, it's possible that at that point, like if you want bipartisanship, what is bipartisanship? Now, the way bipartisanship is talked about in the current day is you have bipartisanship if members of both parties vote on something. How many have to is always changing. Trump's impeachment doesn't count as bipartisanship, even though some signed on to it. So that's the idea of what bipartisanship is. Except what is really happening is that the vast majority of legislation just never moves forward because it's not an equal power structure. The minority has more power on the majority to set the schedule because they can block literally anything that they want. So in theory, though, were you to get rid of the filibuster and actually generating a majority of the seats in the Senate actually mattered, then in theory, maybe the Republicans would actually run on something. They would try to actually get the votes. I doubt it, because again, I don't think that there's much that they really want to accomplish, but I think that in theory it could lead to more bipartisanship. So think about it. If I'm a Republican senator and I can block literally everything, why would I work on anything? Why would I compromise with you if I could just kill the entire thing? Now, if I can't kill the entire thing, if I can maybe delay it a little bit, but it's probably eventually going to pass, then maybe I can get involved in the process. But if I can just kill it whenever I want, I have no interest in any of this. I don't want, a voting rights bill that takes my concerns, at heart. I'm just going to block every voting rights bill always. I think that getting rid of it could actually result in more bipartisanship. And that would, of course, just be, I guess, frosting on the cake. The cake is actually having solutions to the crisis facing America actually being passed by the legislature. Okay, so let's see. So that last story, really fast. Everybody needs to be nice to Major Biden. I'm not generally into the Bidens very much, but the canine Biden is probably my favorite. Now, there are rumors going around that he has been a bad boy and that he has bitten someone. Obviously, I don't want anyone getting bitten by dogs, but I think we also need to be understanding. Major had to move to a new place, suddenly being surrounded by a lot of new people. That can be intimidating for a dog. And so everyone needs to just chill and realize that they're good dogs still. And maybe just not ready for the White House. It's a high pressure environment, and he's not a pup anymore in terms of energy level. So everyone needs to go easy on Major Biden, give him a little bit of time to get used to things. Okay, Major's a good boy. Major's just adjusting. It was the smell of McRibs. Oh, I love the puppies. Dogs will dog. Tree Batiki. I love seeing the dogs in the chat. We do have multiple dog emojis now. Okay, so our title story is Marjorie Greene. This is a bit of an update on something we talked about like a week ago, and I'm tempted to say maybe I was wrong, but it's not very clear yet. So if you recall, on one of the pre-shows last week, I think, we talked about how Marjorie Greene had been just trying to shut down the functioning of the House every day. At like 10:30 in the morning, she'd come in and try to vote for the House to shut down. And everybody have to go and be like, no, we're not shutting down. And some Republicans, anonymously, of course, were very frustrated by that. They were starting to get peeved with her. Now, initially, when she did that, the Republicans all signed on to it. The next time she did it, a few defected, and then more the third time. So she has a new sort of tactic. Rather than trying to shut down the operation of the House, she's trying to make sure that every single thing that normally would be done via a voice vote, like non-controversial legislation that is definitely going to be passed, not just by the Democrats, but by the vast majority of Republicans as well, she wants a roll call vote on all of it. And here is what she had to say about that. The American people deserve to know where their member of Congress stands with a roll call vote. While thousands of illegal aliens are invading Biden's open border, American kids are losing their education with closed schools, thousands of small businesses have been forced to shut down. The people really don't care about politicians whining about voting and doing their jobs for 10 hours. Of course, that's all not. She doesn't care about any of that. And importantly, 13 pieces of legislation are now going to be slowed down for a period of like 10 hours as they come in and do a voice vote, and then another voice vote, and over and over and over for a really long period of time. Notably, none of the 13 pieces of legislation have anything to do with any of the topics that she was talking about there. She's implying that we need to take our time and consider these important pieces of legislation because they have to do with COVID and all. No, they don't. They don't. It's like literally a piece of legislation to give the Congressional Gold Medal Award to members of the Capitol Police Force and the Washington Metropolitan Police Department. It's stuff, let's see, child abuse treatment and prevention, literacy, credit management. 3 of the 13 bills were sponsored by Republicans, and they have nothing to do with the areas that she's talking about there, but she still decided, you know what, I just want to shut everything down. I don't need to be at my committees anyway, so I have time to do this. Now, as before, some are apparently getting frustrated on the Republican side. Obviously, the Democrats are frustrated by its gigantic waste of time. But even some of the Republicans are. One anonymous aide to a Republican official said her act is starting to wear thin, although apparently not thin enough for you to actually go on the record about it. Now, those who are going on the record about it are much more positive towards her. Jim Jordan, Jacket Off Jordan himself, said, I think Greene is just doing her committee work. That is her committee work. So I get that that's like, I guess, supposed to be a joke since she's not on committees. So this is what she's doing, and it's serious work. He knows that it's not serious. It has nothing to do with anything. It's shutting down completely non-controversial legislation. It's inconveniencing all of the members of the House, including the Republicans, including Jim Jordan. But Jim Jordan is a tiny little scared weenie, and he's not going to go up against Marjorie Greene no matter how much she probably annoys him or inconveniences him or wastes his time and all of that. He's going to pretend that it's not a big deal. So she's just going to be a big waste of time, an obstacle to getting things done. Hopefully that is incorporated into the strategy that the Democrats have going forward, prioritize the most important things. I think that especially in the House, they'll be able to get past whatever Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership actually wants to. Anything that doesn't get passed, I would argue, is not a result of Marjorie Greene's marginal delays to this sort of thing. It's because it wouldn't actually be prioritized. And at the end of the day, while it's annoying to see this happening in the House is hardly the place where the least progress is being made. So she's going to waste some time. She's going to use it to raise a bunch of money. It's going to be really annoying. And unfortunately, she does have a tiny bit of political power, but it doesn't really get to the heart of the frustrations that I or a lot of other leftists have with American politics right now. Ryan says, P.S. My grandmother's fully vaccinated with Pfizer. Many of my family over 60 are in the process now. I'm so glad my 84-year-old grandmother made it. Well, that's awesome, Rye Guy. Very glad to hear that. Dago Bengal says, can we impeach MTG? No. I mean, look, they're going to try to take her down with some establishment Republican, and it's probably going to fail terribly. And then some Democrat, maybe a good one, will go up against her and probably fail because it's a really red district and it's probably full of people who believe that Hillary is drinking baby hormones. That's what it is. Richard Rose says, legend has it Major is descended from German resistance Nazi hunting dogs, and the person he bit was Stephen Miller disguised. I don't think that's actually canonical. Maybe. Eliana Fox, welcome to Tier 1 YouTube membership. Thank you for being a member. Do appreciate that. Molly, glad that you got that week off so that you can catch up on the show. Can I tell you something? So on the show, we're going to talk briefly again about the royals, mainly from the point of view of people who want to deny that anything was going on because racism doesn't exist. So we will be talking about that. But before we get to that, yesterday on the show, I talked about how I fundamentally don't get the whole royal thing. And I understand there's a lot of people like me that don't get it. And I used an analogy, and the analogy was, what if I was just super obsessed with this old woman I saw at the supermarket, and everyone was obsessed, and we all wanted to follow everything that she does? Well, there was a better metaphor out there, apparently. Patrick Frayne wrote this. I think this is for an Irish newspaper. And there's a bit here, but I want to read it because it's great. It is just the first two paragraphs of what he wrote. And he said, having a monarchy next door is a little like having a neighbor who's really into clowns and has a house daubed in clown murals, displays clown dolls in each window, and has an insatiable desire to hear about and discuss clown-related news stories. More specifically for the Irish, it's like having a neighbor who's really into clowns, and also your grandfather was murdered by a clown. Beyond this, it's the stuff of children's stories. Having a queen as head of state is like having a pirate or a mermaid or an Ewok as head of state. What's the logic? Bees have queens, but the queen bee lays all the eggs in the hive. The Queen of the Britons has laid just 4 British eggs, and one of those is the sweatless creep Prince Andrew, so it's hardly deserving of applause. That's a little bit harsh there at the end about her kids. I mean, obviously, that one particular one is worthy of that criticism. But yeah, it's just... And it's like them having the obsession. I just, like, people like Piers Morgan, who's once again trending because he performatively stormed off the set of a show he was on to show how mad he was about all of this. I guess it's useful for them. The media focuses so much on the royals, and it benefits not just the royals, it benefits the media, and not just in behind-the-scenes access, being able to go to the parties and stuff like that, but apparently there are enough Brits who take this super seriously that you taking it seriously as a member of the media can get them to follow you. Like, Piers Morgan isn't doing this because years of being a member of their media has told him that it's not going to get a good reception. I think he fully knows that it's going to result in him trending and all of that. But it is weird, man. I don't know that I'm ever going to get it. I've briefly put my toe in the water for this Meghan Markle stuff because of the obvious racism and everything, but I'm never going to fundamentally get the obsession. Chris Ricard, how's it going? Says, what I will never understand is how when Democrats win, they have to deliver everything, but when Republicans win, they don't have to do jack diddly crap. Well, I mean, part of the explanation is, what are you promising to get in? Now, sometimes the Democrats will just promise an end to what the Republicans are doing, and thus, by just winning, they get it. They don't have to do much. But generally, Democratic voters are more motivated by identifying real problems, coming up with solutions, and wanting to see them put into practice. Not nearly as much as I would want, and very rarely are the solutions what I would choose, but I think that does motivate a lot of the voters. On the right, though, there's a few, people who the only thing that politics is for is to oppose abortion. They in theory want to get the Republicans in. They're apparently fine with the Republicans going literally decades not accomplishing anything in that area. It seems like if I was an anti-abortion insane person, I would want some kind of progress after decades. But if you've elected people after months and months of just watching stuff about how people are being mean to Dr. Seuss, then what are you actually expecting the Republicans to do? There's no big piece of legislation that needs to be passed in regards to that. Just you being there is a victory over the bad people who are taking away Dr. Seuss, even though it was his own publisher, not Democrats in the House. And notably, I forget who it was, but someone on Twitter pointed out, Trump was in charge for 4 years. And yet this cancellation stuff was still happening. What did Trump ever do to stop it? How did his presence make it any better? If that is actually the worst thing that's going on in America, as many Republicans say, the biggest issue is cancellation. Well, what did having Trump as president and having a conservative Supreme Court and Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate, the House up until 2 years ago, the Senate up until a few months ago, how did that help in any way? Did that make less cancellations? Like, you voted based on this stuff, but it didn't change anything. And now, like, we can identify that and we can talk about it, whether we think it's true or not. I don't think that the right is actually conscious of that. I think that they just want the win. They want to own the libs. One way to own the libs is by beating them in an election, and then, I don't know, nothing, really. No expectations. You can just get in there and you can be Marjorie Greene, and you can just take up space and take up time and do nothing. She has no interest in actually doing anything. She's there to stop stuff, which makes her a really awesome example of a Republican elected official. Okay, Peter Grudge says, hi, John. Marjorie Greene is so insufferable, and I wish she would go away. By the way, what's with the dragon balloon behind you? So that was a birthday thing that Judith got for me. It was very nice of her. And it is still up more than a month later. It is still strong. I'm very curious to know when it is actually going to drop. But I'm going to leave it there, at least until everybody gets back in the studio. And so if it stays up, you'll be able to see. Marcus the Woo says, we get it. You are not like other girls, LOL. No, I understand. Me not getting the royals, again, as I said on the show, does not make me interesting. That's not why I'm expressing it. Probably at least as many people don't get it at all as are obsessed with it. But I have plenty of positions that are not unique. I'm still going to talk about them. Wayne says, WandaVision finale thoughts. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, so I will be very vague and say I really liked it. I thought it was awesome. Overall, it was a great show. I didn't really have any expectations going into it. I thought that the trailers were weird. And obviously the show starts off very weird. But I've just been desperate for MCU content. And I think that they made something really unique. And they, I think at least in some ways, expanded what the MCU can be about. I hope that there are more shows like it. Not like it in any specific way, but that diverge from the normal MCU movie paradigm, I guess. And like, if I can say, I think the most positive thing I can say about it is that if you had asked me prior to that to rank the people in the MCU that I was interested in, I don't know if Scarlet Witch would have made the top 10 or the top 20, but now she's right about at the top of the list. Vision's pretty far up too, but yeah, just a fascinating character, and I would love to see more. I wish that she had a movie coming out soon. I know that she's going to, but it feels like a million years from now. It's not even specifically for her. I would be very interested in her having a solo movie as a result of that show. Anne, thank you for the super sticker. Do appreciate that. Joe Schmo says, why can't an individual member of the House force a roll call vote anyway? Or why can't? It shows how one congressperson can wield power of the whole process. I mean, it is perfectly legitimate under the rules. It is legitimate. I get what you're saying. For me, I don't know, there's some things that I want to be available, but I want there to be norms that govern the usage, I guess. Okay, everybody, it looks like we have come, it's the age of Aquarius. This is the age of Aquilus, actually. Richard Rowe, I totally agree. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here for the pre-show. We've got more, but it's not super timely. You can always wait till tomorrow, and I do have to do a little bit of prep for the return of Aquilus Gordon to the show. Quay is going to be here. We're going to break down some really fascinating incidents of racism, as well as one just desperate attempt to demonstrate masculinity that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we've got other important news, too, having to do with the vaccine, having to do with kids being caged at the border, strikebacks against voting rights in 2 different states. We're going to break down all of the details. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. Amber Smith pre-gamed too hard. I need to pre-game just a little bit more in terms of coffee for the show. But there's time for both me and for you. So hopefully on the other side, we'll be well caffeinated, and I'll see you then.